Welcome to episode 9 of Creativity from Within podcast. Today's guest is Alvin Clayton, artist and restaurateur. I am Roxanne Catherine, and the episode today would be Creative Seasons, Embracing Flow, Rest, and Renewal. Hope you enjoy. Hi, Alvin. Welcome to the podcast. I'm happy that
Thank
you're
you.
here. Thanks for taking the time to speak to me today and to try to inspire as many people watching as we could. Today's episode is going to be Creative Seasons, Embracing Flow, Rest, and Renewal. And you're an artist, correct? A professional,
Yeah,
seasoned artist. And what I wanted to know is with your art, you're also a restaurateur, correct? So
that's correct. Yeah.
you're an artist and you have a restaurant. How do you first and foremost, how do you balance the two? How do you know when to take the time to do your art and when to just dive into your restaurant business?
Well, I mean, I don't have an option with the restaurant, right?
Right.
It has a certain time frame. I have to be there at a certain time. I have to leave at a certain time. But the art is something that's part of me, like at all times. I mean, and even, I think when you're an artist, you're in a creative mode at 24/7, for me
Mm-hmm.
anyways, as an artist. I mean, even when I'm not painting, I'm thinking of art. I see things in front of me and I look at it as a perspective of art. Even at the restaurant, when I create new menus for the restaurant, it's a creative process. So I think the creativity and the process of that is something that's kind of always ongoing. But I will say, because I do have to be at the restaurant at a certain time, I put that time into it. But then once I leave the restaurant, sometimes I leave the restaurant, I go straight to my studio because I'm still kind of wound up.
Mm-hmm.
And I would paint till 2, 3 in the morning. I paint before I go into the restaurant. I paint on my day off. So that process is always going. I'm driving to work. I see a sunset and I take photographic memories of that. So for me, anyways, as an artist, I'm like 24/7 in golf in the art and or the process of it.
And if you don't mind sharing, what's the medium that you use, and how long does it take you? I mean, I know with each piece it varies, but how long
Yeah.
does it take you to do a piece of work, and what medium do you use for your paintings?
So I paint with oils and there was no real form behind that except that the fact that I'm a self-taught artist
Mm-hmm.
and I fell in love with Matisse's work. And so for months I just copied Matisse's work and I realized that they painted with oils. So that's how I started with
Oh, okay.
oils. And so but I'm so accustomed to that process now that I continue to paint with oils. And for me, when I go in front of a canvas, I already know what I'm going to paint.
Mm-hmm.
I see the whole painting in front of me. I know what color. There's probably sometimes, if it's a large piece, 1 or 2 colors that I don't have filled in my head yet. And then once I put the other colors down, I kind of look for balance and harmony in the painting. So the last couple colors might take me a little extra time to make sure that I get the right colors because there's a lot of different colors that I use in my paintings. But the one thing that I want to create once I do it is to have balance because you could be disturbed with seeing too many colors, but if
Mm-hmm.
when you look at it, it's has harmony, then there's still a soothing effect. So that's a very tightrope to walk and have a great balance with the amount of colors that I use in my paintings. But I can finish a piece within 3, 4 days. But I'm so committed to it. Sometimes I don't even realize how many hours I've spent on it.
Mm-hmm.
But on a day basis, it may seem like 3 days, 4 days. Sometimes a week is the longest I think I've worked on a piece.
Amazing. And well, I know as a seasoned artist, do you do like a lot of solo shows? Could you tell us like what was the last show you did where you showed your work and how did that work out for you?
So the last couple shows that I've done, in last year, July to December of last year,
Mm-hmm.
I was the featured artist at the Southampton African American Museum, and that was a one-man show. I showed, I believe I showed 26 pieces in that show. Very successful. I had a couple articles written on the show. It was really well received. And the last show that I did was actually about 3 weeks ago. I was down in Trinidad, which is where we're from.
Yeah,
And
we are.
I was down there at the Central Bank for a show. It was a group show.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Painting in the Garden. And it was to benefit a homeless woman's shelter.
Oh, nice.
So I showed 9 pieces of that show, and it was very well received as well. We had some issues with customs, but they gave us lemons. I was able to make lemonade out of it.
Okay.
I actually My paintings were kind of seized at
Oh.
customs down in Trinidad, but I was able to have some prints made of the work, so I was able to show the prints at the show. But it was very well received. It was a beautiful show. Um, Another American Caribbean artist, Elisa Abedin, she was the one that put the show together. But we were in some great company with some great artists. And that museum down in Trinidad, Central Bank Museum, is probably one of the premier places to show down in
Mm-hmm.
Trinidad. So that was one of my main goals to show there. And so that was one thing that was accomplished. And we had a couple articles written about it and television news following it. So it was a very successful show.
Wonderful. And did you get your paintings back?
Yeah, on my way
Okay.
back, I was able to get my art. So
Okay.
it worked out.
Okay, good. And let's talk a little bit about food. Let's segue into food because, like you said, I think they both go hand in hand. Creativity with the art and creativity with the palette, right? No pun
Absolutely. I
intended.
mean, when I cook, I tell people
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like using paints, right? With the seasonings that I use,
Yeah.
I think of different types of seasonings and different things that would go with something. And once again, it's also for me the cooking is the same way, the same approach that I use with art.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not reinventing the wheel. You know, I took Matisse's work, and I was inspired by that to paint people of color in that light and that
Mm-hmm.
realm. And the same thing with food. I mean, food is already there. We already eat it. So what I try to do with my restaurant is I have how do I make dishes that people are used to and accustomed to? How do I put a Caribbean twist or a Southern twist on that, which are the flavors of my restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
So to give you a very small example, like we have a Caesar salad. So Caesar salad, everybody knows Caesar salad. It comes with the croutons, So instead of doing croutons, we do like fried black eyed peas.
Okay.
So little things like that. We have a hummus at the restaurant that I use. I decided, what flavors can I give it that gives it a Caribbean flair? So we have a jerk hummus, and then I combine it with Trinidad fried bakes that we have to use as the pita bread or the dipping for it. So it's just like it's still putting things together
Mm-hmm.
and making it come into harmony that people can enjoy. So it's the same approach, just different, but it's still on the creative cusp.
Oh, that's nice. And you seem to do a lot, right? So let's talk about resting. What signs do you look for when you know it's time to pause versus to keep pushing through?
So for me, I get into a phase. I have like different series that I work on.
Mm-hmm.
I have a jazz series that I work on. I have a Caribbean series that I work on. I do portraitures and different things like that. So, and I'm thinking all the time about art.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I get to the canvas, almost everything that I was thinking about, I could go and I can crank 4 or 5 paintings out. And then I kind of need to breathe because then I'm kind of tired of doing that, and I need to change and go into another direction. So I'll take a little time off before I get into the next mode, because each thing that I paint also, I treat each series differently. So I might have a way in which I deal with my jazz pieces and my Caribbean pieces. So I try not to kind of like have them commingle so much when I do it, so that there's consistency in each series that I do. And so I will take a couple weeks off where I won't paint or whatever. But in that couple weeks time, I'm thinking, okay, what is the next series going to be? How do I want to do it? What colors am I talking about? And now more than ever, with everything that's going on, everything that I paint now, there's a purpose to it.
Okay.
Initially, when I first started painting, I painted just for the joy and whatever motivated me. I painted and had that coming out, and it was all, very one dimensional. Now, almost everything that I do, regardless of how simple it may look to someone, there's a thought pattern that's put into it. Why is this piece important? Why am I trying to do it? What messages I'm trying to send? And so every piece has purpose that I paint.
That's lovely. And well, I know that your restaurant is based in New Rochelle, correct?
Yes.
Do you ever like, how can I ask this? Do you ever venture out? Well, I know you can't pick up your restaurant and move it somewhere else, but do you ever venture out, like, let's say, to events in other parts of Westchester where people can become familiar with your restaurant, or is it not?
No, I do go out. The restaurant has been successful mostly
Right,
by word of mouth.
right.
People have spread it. We've been there for 15 years and going into our 16th. And so, I mean, now I kind of take a little more breaks and I go out and I'm able to, to promote the restaurant and for people to see us. So I think it was like, time flies so quickly, I'm not 100% sure, but like maybe 3 years ago, I was also one of the featured artists at the Rye Art Center.
Okay.
So I had my show there, and I was able, with those, it was one of their most successful shows, and I was able, with all the folks coming in, to be able to promote my restaurant through that as well, and to also expand the viewership for the art. I forgot, last summer also, I was one of the featured artists at the Hudson River Museum. It's called Neighboring Gardens, I believe was the show, and it was in conjunction with the Bronx Zoo. And I had one of my pieces down there that was featured that in the lovely show that they had.
And did you start your artistic journey in Trinidad and Tobago, or did you start here? Because I know you've been here forever, but just for somebody who's curious.
I do have to say it started in Trinidad because I always loved art, and I would draw. But I don't know what era you're from, but in the era that I was born in, you couldn't tell your parents you wanted to be an artist. It was not a thing. It's like you better be a doctor, a lawyer, professional or whatever. So I always kind of had that instilled in me, the desire for art, and always drew, but I never painted. And it wasn't until I was in Paris that I fell in love with the work of Henri Matisse. And because I could draw, there seemed to be a simplicity in Matisse's work that kind of appealed to me. And the colors were very much like the colors that I grew up with in Trinidad. I mean, the patterns on a linoleum floor, and and the curtains that we had, and the couches and stuff like that. So that was very appealing to me. So I started copying his work for like 6 months just to teach myself. And then I said, okay, you know what? I want to paint people of color like this. And I started painting. And then in another life, I was another profession.
Okay.
And I was featured in that realm where they did a story on me, and they featured my art when I had my very first art show, Elsa Clench House of Style. And she showed my art, and that's kind of how the art became a career. Because CNN went all over the world, and people started calling, asking where they can buy my art. So that's kind of how it got started with the art.
And what about, let's say there's, well, this podcast is going to be aired, right, on the local Greenberg channel. Somebody looking on, a young person coming up and they want to do art, and like you said, you have to be, I don't know what it's like in today's world, you know what I mean? So I don't know, I guess in today's society, people, I don't know, I'm not, my kids are grown, so I can't speak for that. But in today's society, I don't know if it's freeing for a kid to go to the parent and say, well, mom and dad, I don't think I want to go to Yale or Columbia or anything. I just want to paint. What would you say to that young person? I would say about 2021, that they're battling with themselves to have that conversation, to pursue their craft, which is their passion, which is art. What advice could you give to
Well,
that person?
there's a two-way street with that, right? So I think there's a lot more accepting now for parents to see children as artists,
Right.
because we can reach the whole world now with our work. The internet, social media, and all
Yeah.
these things are, they're lifelines to people. And then the other part of that would be, if something is your passion, regardless of what other people think about it, if you're in a space where you're old enough to do what you really want to do, you need to do that and pursue it. However, there are consequences to that as well. There's a lot of the art is still something that's not widely accepted by a lot of people. It's a hard way to earn a living. But I think, if something is your passion, you find a way to do it, and you do other things that you need to do to survive or whatever. And that goes with anything. It goes with acting. It goes with dance. It goes with painting. And so because there's so many talented people, there's so many gifted people, and the thing is, I think regardless of how talented you are, in order to be successful at it, you have to have that lucky star sometimes following you. And there's certain people that actually get it. Not everybody gets it, but it has to be something that's calling you and you're passionate about, to stay with it regardless. For me, that's what it was. If I never sold a painting, I would still be painting, because that's what I love and that's what speaks to me. But you do have to get a break, and it's like in athletics. There's tons of gifted athletes, but there's only a few that make it into the pros, right? And so I think it's the same thing that kind of stays with the art. But people that love it, even when they're not taken by a team or whatever, they continue to play for the love of the game. And so if art is your passion, you play for that and you hope for the best. But you can't really be thinking so much as you're guaranteed to make a living by it, or selling paintings or whatever. So that would be my advice. But I would say follow your dream. If that's what you love, you're going to do it and find a way to do it.
And how would you say, let's say that the young person, they found a way to do it, and let's say they decided, oh, I saw the Alvin guy on the podcast and he did his jazz and the series and blah blah blah, and they decided to start with, let's say, 10 paintings, right? What advice would you give them about marketing those 10? Because now they have the 10 paintings. And like you said, it's not about the money so much as it is the passion, because the money follows, right?
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to a young person? Okay, so they're taking the action, they have the 10 paintings, but they don't know where to go to market, or to at least have one show, or
Right.
what it be, group or solo.
I mean, like I said, once again, the internet is a big advantage that we didn't have back in our day. There's so much stuff you can Google. You can Google where there are shows, where they're looking for artists. You can actually put your work out so people can see it. And, it becomes like a snowball, right? The
Mm-hmm.
more people that see your work or whatever and are appreciative of it, somebody might see it and said, you know what, this would work great here, or they may reach out to you. And I think it's just basically getting your work out, finding out where there are possibilities to show your work. Now you can show your work at libraries. You can,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many different venues. Some people even have like offices and stuff like that where they would don't mind showing work of young artists and and then reach out, if you feel you're at the point where you want to reach their gallery or whatever. You can do that. Go to as many shows as you can, and meet people, like-minded people, meet the artists, meet the curators, and just kind of like be in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And then something may hit. You never know. But if you can't just paint and hide it, right? Or else you're the only one that's going to see it. And so you have to get into that space where your work can be seen and other people can appreciate it. And then I know the other thing that people ask, it's like, oh, how much do you get for your painting? You know, that's so like it's so self, fulfilling, right? Because everybody, somebody might value something at this price, somebody valued it at that price. So you never know. I mean, if you live in an area where people are impoverished, you can think that your painting's worth whatever it is. If you're showing it to a certain audience, you're only going to get what they can afford to give to you, right? So once again, depending on what you feel the value of your work is, you have to be in that circle where people can actually afford your art. And so that's a marketing strategy and whatever. It's also, it goes with who you're painting with, who your contemporaries, what are your contemporaries getting for their art. And so there are like so many nuances
Yeah.
involved in that part of it. But I think initially you can't be thinking of that if you're an artist. I mean, I never thought that I would ever sell a painting. That was not my intention to paint. And even now when I paint, that's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, okay, how can I communicate with these people? What is my humanity, and what am I trying to express to somebody? What trying to make a difference, whatever. And I think that reality and that authenticity is what people respond to. And then if you happen to be in a circle where people can actually afford to pay for the value that you want to put on your art, then you're able to sell it to them and make a living or whatever. But that's very subjective.
I agree because it's like I think it's also important to have different price points,
Yeah.
for your art, which is what I do. I don't expect certain people to pay like, let's say, 1,200 or 500 for a painting. So I do smaller ones, or you can offer
Right.
prints, make prints of your work. And it's also important to give some away. I every time I do a series, I give away a painting. And I know I mentioned this in a podcast prior, where some people might think, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But you have to give to get. And sometimes when you give, it's not so much that you want to get, but it's that you see somebody and your spirit just tells you, inspire that
Right.
person with a painting, because you never know by doing that what that would mean to that person in their life at that time.
Right.
So I totally agree with that. It's not just about going into it for the money, it's going into it to inspire and touch others. So
Yeah, no, absolutely.
that's a valid
I
point.
totally agree with that. And I've been in situations where
Mm-hmm.
somebody, I have a certain price for a painting,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody, a younger person, whatever, like really loved the painting. And I can tell there's
Yeah.
more than just having the painting, there's an emotional attachment to
Yes.
them. And then you are much more willing to say, you know what, to make a concession to give it to them at a price that they can afford,
Yeah.
knowing that the appreciation and the message that I wanted to give will always be appreciated by that person. Because your art is, they're like your babies,
Yeah.
and you want to know that it's in a good home, and where people can kind of like really care about it and kind of nurture it and show it to others. So that's a big part of it as well for me.
That's true. And we're running out of time, but I wanted to close by talking about food again, by talking about your restaurant a little bit. Um, do you have special events? I know you're closed on Monday and Tuesday, correct?
Yeah,
Okay, so do you
yes.
have like special events on special nights for people who would, probably want to check it out or something?
Yeah. So I'm actually in the process of kind of reconfiguring the restaurant
Mm-hmm.
such a bit because there's a lot of new people moving into the neighborhood. There's a lot of high-rise buildings now.
Yeah,
I mean, New Rochelle actually has a skyline now,
I've seen
and
that.
a lot of the younger people coming in from Manhattan. So what I'm planning to do with the restaurant is to kind of convert the front of the restaurant to more of a casual fare
Mm-hmm.
with light bites and tapas type dishes, shared dishes, where it becomes a neighborhood drop-in that if you want to come 3, 4 times a week, you can. And
Okay.
then the fine dining will do towards the back of the restaurant. So it's more going to be a vibe type thing. And our hours are going to change. We're going to be open much later. We're still going to have the music Friday and Saturdays. I'm thinking right now of doing R&B Thursday
Oh,
with live
nice.
music. So I'm in the process of kind of like, being nimble and changing with the changes that's happening in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as they say, stay tuned, right? Because we have some really good and interesting things happening. I'm working with a young chef from Trinidad, actually. His name is Chef Picky
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram, but he and I we work really together because we have it's art with the food that we're
That's
creating,
nice.
and it's going to be I think as good as our restaurant is, we're going to take it to like another level. So
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I told you it runs out quickly,
I
right?
can't believe that's already that
An
time.
amazing conversation. And where can people find you on Instagram for those people looking in that would want to follow you?
So I Alvin Clayton artists, they
Okay.
can find me on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or Alvin Clayton. I have like a few things there because I was an ex-model, and so there's a lot of stuff on the internet. But Alvin Clayton artist is where you see some of my art and that profile.
Okay. Well, Alvin, thank you so, so much for your time. And I wish you nothing but the best with your art and the food. And I'll definitely be dropping in for a Friday session because I would love to hear some live music.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thanks
My
a lot.
pleasure.
Take care.